we kind of can see what this summer has done so far climate-wise with the heat that has been brought to not only in United States, but even across seas.
So the question becomes, how much heat can you handle? Last month was the third hottest July on record for the U.S. And according to the First Street Foundation, there's more where that came from. And most of us will have to endure some dangerous heat in the coming years.
Yeah, so we got Dr. Jeremy Porter, the Chief Research Officer from First Street Foundation with us. Jeremy, thanks so much for being with us. And, just looking at this heat index, debuted today. Can you kind of break down what it is so the folks at home can understand how it works?
Yeah, so we actually built out a national report and as a way to communicate extreme heat risk. There's been, as you just mentioned, a lot of attention paid towards heat waves that have occurred, the record-setting temperatures in the South and other parts of the country. But a lot of that's really focused on extreme events as they happen, and then it's not really couched in a way that allows us to understand what's going to happen in the near term. We know it's hot. We deal with the heat. We actually work backwards from a historic analysis to today to show that actually we're seeing extreme heat events much more often than we were in the past. And then we took global climate models and forecasted out 30 years to say not only is it worse today than it was 30 years ago, but in 30 years, we're going to see even more extreme heat events.
So this report that came out shows a model for what you're calling the extreme heat belt, and that stretches from the north into the Midwest. Was that surprising to you, that area that now you can kind of designate as, future extreme heat belt?
It was really surprising. It was one of the first things that popped out. We went and dug back into the climate models. We did some background research. It actually turns out that in the mid 90s, Chicago hit a heat index of about 118 degrees. So it's not that hard to fathom it reaching as far north as we see. The area that we ended up identifying as the extreme heat belt in our model does stretch from about Texas and Louisiana all the way up into southern Wisconsin. But remember, from the National Weather Service, you only need about 95-degree air temperature with about 80% humidity to get to 125-degree heat index. So we're capturing something that, when you put it in those types of terms, really isn't that hard for people to fathom.
Yeah, to digest. It's just like, oh, goody. All right, so we're going to go to the Sun Belt. Let's go way down, in the southern part of the continental U.S. We go to Miami-Dade County, and you look at how many days that they see temperatures around, let's say, 103 degrees. But now you jump ahead 3 decades. You average 100 degrees or more, three or 4 days for the year, and now we're going to jump into 34 days. So kind of talk about that contrast too. What are we going to have to do as normal citizens and normal, travelers on how to adjust to that?
Yeah, that was another one of the really interesting points from the report, was that there is a protection effect from being close to water. So if you are east of about halfway through Louisiana, all the way up the eastern seaboard, you start to see that there's this protection effect from being next to the Gulf, although the water is warmer in the Atlantic Ocean. So there's actually a physical limit on how hot the heat index can actually get. But it doesn't mean that people in these areas aren't going to see extreme heat events overall. They may not hit that 125-degree heat index that we see from the heat belt, but they will see more days of 100-degree temperature. And that loosely aligns with what the National Weather Service calls dangerous days at their 103-degree heat index. So what we're seeing in Florida, for instance, in Miami-Dade, today they see about 50 days at 100-degree heat index. In 30 years, they're going to see 91 days at that 100-degree heat index. So all of a sudden, you can think back to the hottest, 2 months of the summer. All of a sudden, that becomes 4 months, 3.5 months. People have to prepare in a way that allows them to cool and protect themselves within their own homes. But also, communities have to start planning for responses to these types of extreme events. So there are a lot of different considerations when you think about these extreme heat events increasing into the future.
Dr. Porter, last question here. So, we talk a lot of numbers, that's a lot of information. So if people are listening to this, what do you hope the average American takes away from this report?
The average American, our hope is, and it's really our goal at the First Street Foundation, is to quantify and communicate climate risk in a way that's easily accessible. NOAA, the National Weather Service, all of these science groups at the federal government collect a tremendous amount of data. They do a tremendous amount of analysis, but regular people really don't understand how it's impacting them. So we've created a tool at riskfactor.com where we put the data in a way that people can go in, they can log on with their address, and they can see these extreme events and how they're going to impact them in an accessible and easy to understand way. One the main takeaway for us is it's gotten worse now than it was in the past, and it's all in the near term. It's only going to continue to get worse. So people should be prepared and have information to protect themselves.